Crossroads project came about from a developer who we've been partnered with at ESI Design for a while. So we have a long-standing relationship with these developers. And they reached out, and like many real estate projects, they wanted to increase the value of the building and entice new tenants. And so they reach out to ESI Design for our solutions on how to do that. And essentially, what we wanted to do was start locally and say, what is this community, what is this neighborhood, and what is the history of this neighborhood? And sort of these iconic California posters from the 50s is what really stood out to us. So we wanted to take that vintage feel and meld that with the newest cutting edge technology so that we had something that felt man-made and human-made and really tangible in a sense. So essentially then we took that entire design aesthetic and we actually built all of the content that you'd see in a video game engine. So it's all built in Unity so that it can change in real time. Which means then, as you walk by, it's seasonally changing, it's responding to the weather. If you walk by and there's sort of a bear out in the redwoods forest, that bear would notice that someone is there and walk up and approach it. Or things would respond as you walk past and billow in the wind. Or, there's sort of all of these different ways, sort of secret Easter eggs where if you stay long enough, something will fly up and approach you. So the content behind that melds where, again, it was all driven from this 50s California posters aesthetic to feel all with the human touch, right? And then from that, we worked with animators and sort of built these assets that all are controlled in real time in the video game engine of Unity. And then we have sensors that can sense how many people are present and when they're present. We're pulling in weather API data information. We're pulling in light information about what it's like outside. So the real-time weather in season can be affecting the media in real time in the lobby. So the idea is that you are changing the space, you are a part of the space, your presence matters, and the community that you're in is what's informing the space first and foremost. The reception's been really positive. What's been really nice is, people don't just walk right past anymore. People are stopping and pausing and lingering, or sort of showing it off as someone comes to visit them. So it does become this conversation starter as well, where if you're a tenant in the building and you have a new client coming in, how do you break the ice is one of those things that we all struggle with. And if you meet someone in the lobby, the easiest icebreaker is done for you because ESI gave that to every tenant in the building. At ESI Design, we feel like interactivity is really the cornerstone of successful digital signage projects across the country, across the world, dependent on the setting, whether it's retail, real estate, corporate real estate, commercial real estate. We really feel like that's the definitive element. For us, there are all of these charts you can look at for what the best technology is and what pixel pitch to use and how bright, and whether you should be LED or LCD or projection. And that to us is just the boring homework. Everybody can look up those charts and figure out what the best technology solution is. For us, it's all about storytelling, and for any successful story, it involves the audience, it involves them listening, and they impact the story back. So for us, it's not just telling a story at you, it's telling a story with you. And that's why we feel like really interactivity is not just a parlor trick for ESI. It's the foundation of that experience that you feel like your presence really is important to where you are. So some of the challenges we came up against was, this was our first project built entirely in a video game engine. None of this content is pre-rendered. And this was something that, though we knew it could be done and we tested it and we ran mock-ups and we knew that it would be reliable for the long-term install project world, this was something that was new to us. So we had to learn what that is and how to make sure that it wouldn't crash or that it wouldn't stall. As with anything that's interactive, there's all of the field testing that you have to have, and it never works quite right the first time. And with any tracking system, whether it's optical-based or IR-based or proximity sensor-based, there's sort of a minimal distance and a maximal distance. And so we really had to figure out in this space, where do people want to walk? And thankfully, ESI has a long history in experience design. So we both have knowledge we brought into the project, but we're constantly doing research, watching how people use the spaces that we designed for. So for this sort of lobby space, where do people like to walk? What speeds do they typically walk at? People in these lobbies aren't going to walk right next to the walls, so we shouldn't point our sensors to require that you walk right next to the displays. We basically took our knowledge base and our research and sort of had to figure out exactly where to set up our sensors and calibrate them so that people could walk by and have the experience in a sort of casual, comfortable way instead of feeling like they have to go out of their way to get the experience that we want. I think with anything that's interactive, there's the serendipity of chance. And I always liken it to, if you're trying to balance a stick in the palm of your hand, if you hold your hand like this, it's gonna fall any second. Whereas if you listen to the stick and you're actually paying attention and you're doing this, if you have the fortitude and the presence and state of mind, you can keep that stick balanced for as long as you're able to hold your arm up. And so for us with everything interactive, there's always things that'll be unexpected. And it's really listening and going, oh my God, the bear turned and did this. That was really cool. Let's build that in and let's run with that. And let's learn from these things as people interact with it and play with it. I think one of the defining aspects of this project in particular, and a lot of ESIs, is how do you mix the space and the analog and the digital? And I feel like we're so screen aware in this moment. We're so used to screens, and with our phones and televisions and LED screens, directional light is now a part of our lives. Whereas the way that we're used to seeing the world in the real world is reflected light bouncing off of objects. And so for this project in particular, I feel like where we really succeeded was trying to find things that felt like they were touched by human hands. And even though it is directional light, setting the brightness setting so that it feels more of the world that we're used to, not the world of the screen. And I feel like the most successful digital signage projects aren't the ones that wow you with the resolution, it's the ones that wow you with how seamlessly they blend into the building. So some of the most interesting new technology trends that I've seen is the new haptic feedback that's coming out, both haptic feedback in large-scale digital signage displays, but one thing I've been really following is there's research happening in Brisbane, for example, in what they call touchless haptics, so using ultrasonic sensors that are sending out waves that we can't hear, but that variation in sound waves causes essentially different levels of resistance in the air. So I could reach my finger out, and if I do this, I get the same haptic feedback that you do on your iPhone now, to an even greater degree. And it's not reliable enough to put into the field, let alone a permanent installation yet. But I feel like whether it's 5 or 10 years away, that to me, that we could just reach out and feel a thing and add that whole new sense to our visual sense, that's one of the main elements I'm really interested in.
So fascinating.
Yeah. I also think another technology I'm really interested in is projection, and projection versus LED, mainly because when projections turn off, it can entirely disappear. But again, that difference between reflected light and directional light, projection will always be reflected light. So if you're playing with trompe-l'oeil effects or blending into architecture seamlessly, projection is a really malleable tool to achieve that. And there are great innovations happening with the lensing. It lets you get an ultra-wide throw with the projector being very close to the surface, which means we don't have the same shadow problems that we have, but then we can hide the projectors seamlessly in ceilings, which means you don't see where the video source is coming from, just all of a sudden certain moments of a wall light up and disappear. With projection, you're not confined to the rectangle, in any capacity. So if you want to make specific elements of a wall line up, like nobody could tell where your corners really are, specific pieces of paper line up or specific leaves on a tree light up. And so if you hide your projector properly, then nobody knows where the video source is coming from. It is truly magic. So the tip that I would give for most people to have a higher chance of success with a digital signage system, honestly, is hire ESI Design is the first tip that I'd give. The other tip that I would give to anyone setting up a digital signage system is to think about your content development over time. You don't want to put in a system and in 3 years when you refresh your brand, have to rip out the entire guts of your system. Nobody wants that. And nobody wants to put in the time and money that goes into re-rendering content from scratch. What ESI does is we focus a lot on software-driven content and software-driven rendering in real time or close to real-time rendering as well. That focus on real-time rendering allows us to update content seamlessly and instantly, where we can tie it into your CMS control so that you can make those dynamic updates that look like beautiful pre-rendered evergreen content, but where you're just updating it instantly in a few clicks, and then it translates across in real time. I think that content over time and the shifts that's happening with software-driven content is really the biggest tip that I'd give. And if you learn how to rely on that or hire firms that know how to use that, then you get content that is always fresh, always changing, no matter how many times people visit your display. And then in 3 years, it's completely dynamic and fresh and new, not you're back at square one. I feel like the biggest challenges are the growing and growing resolution. I just saw one of the LED manufacturers we work with here. They were showing a 0.9 millimeter LED, which is beautiful and stunning. And on a display wall in here, that's, a manageable amount of resolution. But as you get larger and larger displays in that, we don't make cameras that actually can keep up with our displays in this moment. And so it's a matter of getting the right displays that actually match the content you can produce in this moment and the walls that you have. Nothing against the 0.9 millimeter display. They're stunning. But a lot of cases, you're putting in displays at a viewing distance where your eye would blend, and you might not even be able to tell the difference between 12 millimeter or the 0.9. So I think, it's keeping up with the resolution chase that's happening on the content side, but it's also making sure that you're buying the right product that actually matches the way viewers are going to be looking at your screen. As far as what's coming next, ESI is working a lot with projection more now than we used to. We're still doing a fair amount with LED and LCD screens as well, but we're finding that projection, with the laser phosphor hybrids, and as their brightness is getting better, that you can do things with the optical illusion that comes from reflected light and the optical illusion that comes from no corners to your raster. And by that I mean you have no idea where the magic can begin and end, and so you don't see any borders, and you just see light transforming in ways that our eyes aren't used to yet. And so I really do feel like the entire industry is going to lean it more into projection now that they can keep up with LED product. And then obviously, the wallpaper LED and the nano LED that's coming down the line and the bendable LED. I feel like, we're able to now make displays in creative shapes. We're not confined by the 16:9 rectangle or the 4:3 cube. As we really get into the idea that it's at this point, if you can imagine it and you hire the right design firm, we can make it happen for you. And that's really ESI's bent, is we don't want to be constrained by the limitation of any one technology. We want to look at a space, step back, listen to the space, see what it needs, and say, we can make content in literally any shape or variation of depth for you. What does the space want? What story does the client need? And then from there, we're now in this wonderful moment where through the various technologies, we can make you video content in any speed, in any shape, in any brightness. DSE is really incredible for my job. I've met people both on the content generation side at this visit and the content output side, obviously, at this conference. And so meeting these people both from the manufacturer side to the software side to the client side, and really, even more than learning what's possible, stepping back and listening in sessions to what people want, what their everyday struggle is. I think we're all looking ahead to what the next really cool feature is. And what I've really learned a lot at DSE is what currently exists that isn't working the way people want. And so how can we step back and learn from what isn't working the right way yet before we get too excited about the new features, so that when you hire us, we know that you're giving you something that is reliable and meeting every expectation that you have. And then we'll show you the things you didn't know about and raise the bar for what you thought was possible.